Awesome. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. I got a great guest. Frank's on the show with me. He's going to share with you his story. It's going to be a great time. Fun fact about Frank is that in his past life, he had been in numerous car accidents, like tons of them consistently, but came with a lifestyle, walked away unscathed, no major scars, no major injuries. So lucked out for that. Before we get started, when we get started here, you want to give a shout out to anybody particular before we get going?
No.
No? Good. Good. Okay.
Mm.
Same way I start every episode. What's one thing you're grateful for today and why?
Um, well, the thing I'm most grateful for is my family by any means, and why obviously because they gave me the strength to stay clean, to recover. Like I always hear the story like you got to do it for yourself, and if you do it for somebody else, you won't stay clean. I gotta honestly say, without my family, I wouldn't be clean today. Like I gotta be honest.
Yep. Yeah, well, sometimes we need that motivation, right?
Yeah.
Until we kind of find that purpose for ourselves,
Like
right?
respect for anybody who does it single by himself alone, who doesn't have that. Like for me, I always say it was easy for me because it was like I lost my family. I was on the verge of losing my family, right? So I had something to fight for. I cannot picture how that is for people that don't have that, like you by
Mhm.
yourself, it's like
Well,
I just my wife's gone since 5 days. It's the longest I've been separated from her and the kids because she went to see her mom. I'm going tomorrow. And like being by myself again, that was quite a challenge. I mean, nowadays I can keep myself busy with something else, but I was thinking about that in the last 5 days. I'm like, man, I wonder if I would have stayed clean without my family, without having that urge to stay clean for my family, right?
yep. Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I'm complete opposite. I was 21 when I first went to treatment,
Mm,
and it was all the old boys that like had the family, it worked the same job forever, that had to make this change in their life, yet they had all this like structure, so to speak, and that motivated me. I'm like, fuck, if they can do it, then I can do it, right?
mm.
So, what was your childhood upbringing like?
That was awesome. I was born in early 80s in 81 in East Berlin. My dad was a prof of educational science, former teacher. He was the Secretary of State for Education, or Party Secretary for Education in a former socialist party in East Germany. Mom was a teacher. Have an older brother. He is quite a smart character. He's with the army nowadays in Germany. I had a absolute good upbringing, and the question always comes like, "Oh, you come from East Berlin, or East Germany. It must have been you guys had nothing. It must have been so rough." It wasn't like that for me. Like we had everything. We had a nice apartment in Berlin. I went to school. Like yes, I mean, keep in mind when the wall fell, I was 9 years old, right? So it was not that I think the first 9 years of your life you don't get politically involved and you don't. I understand where people in their 20s back then in the early 90s were probably more pissed at the system that I could have been. But for me, we had everything. Like, yes, I couldn't travel to France or the States or whatever, but we went skiing in the Czech Republic, we went hiking in Poland and, you know, like we went to the Baltic Sea for going on our beach vacation. And we had a vacation home close to Berlin, where we went every so often, like a little cottage. It wasn't ours, it belonged to the party, like to the Ministry of Education. But I had an awesome upbringing. Like I can't complain anything about how the time was before the wall fell. After the wall fell, it was a little bit things changed quite a bit because obviously my dad was unemployed instantly. He was a high ranking member of the Socialist Party, so for us it was like both of my parents always worked. That's how it just was in the former socialist countries. There was none of this like 1950s US style where you like the mom is stay at home or the home maker. So always both of my parents worked, but all of a sudden there was one income gone, right? And my dad, as being a prof in educational science and writing curriculums for the entire country, all of a sudden was unemployed, was not allowed to work under the new combined or West German system. So he actually went back to university to upgrade a degree and worked for the rest of his life until he retired with disabled people and people with learning disability. But for the first, I'd say like the early 90s, like 90 to 93, 94, it was different for us. It was quite a bit of a struggle
Mhm.
for the family, like especially for my mom keeping the family together, for my dad staying sane as being a fairly well respected party member to being an unemployed
Yeah.
guy that has to go back to school in his 50s, right?
Yeah.
And my parents did a really good job in not letting my brother and I feel that too much. Like we still, my mom got really excited about shit. Like she was always a Beatles fan, right? And so she went to see, we went to see Liverpool and London and shit when I was 10 years old, and they wanted to travel around and see France. And so even with not too much money at that time in the early 90s, my parents took me around and we just went from youth hostel to youth hostel, you know. And it doesn't matter if it was in Amsterdam or if it was in Paris or if it was in Marseille or like whatever my mom wanted to see that she was dreaming of since her childhood that she couldn't see, we went around. So I went all across Europe as a kid. I cannot complain about anything. We always had food. I can never think of a time where we had a shitty upbringing. And like I said, well educated parents, I can never say, of course I got a beating when I was a real shithead, right? Like
That's a
that's
generation thing, right?
that's
Like I
but
took my licking.
I cannot say that my dad was an abusive dad, none whatsoever, you know. My mom was probably more verbally abusive, if anything, you know, and I knew when it was like when you did really a lot of shit, it was you just wait till your dad comes home
Oh
because
yeah.
when I was a young kid, my dad was often outside the country, either in Russia or in other parts of Eastern Europe for conferences and teachers conferences and stuff like that. So dad's gone for a week to Hungary, and you know you went really sideways, and then mom's like, you just wait till your dad comes home. Like, ah, fuck, now you know you fucked up, right? So, but no, my parents were really loving people, smart, caring. They probably the people that I look up to the most, right?
Cool.
Because I cannot say I had a shitty upbringing. They,
Cool.
yeah,
How'd you ever get introduced to drugs then, or what was? Do you remember your first experience drinking drugging?
yeah, the drinking, to be quite honest, I don't remember because drinking was it socially was very different. I remember for a New Year's party at age 10 or 11 drinking champagne, right? Because your parents wouldn't withhold that from you. It's not it's not like here where like you're not 18, you're not allowed to drink, so you got to sneak around. Your parents would give you that. I remember getting in shit because my mom she had like this crystal bottle, like it was glass, but it looked like carved glass, and she had some homemade schnapps in there, cherry stuff, and like being probably grade 3 or 4, I came home with buddies from school and we started nipping on that stuff, right? And in order for my parents not to notice, I put water in it. And then my mom invited some friends, like some, and she was all proud of her cherry schnapps, and she poured everybody after dinner, and everybody's like, well, like this watered down shit. I was in quite a bit of shit for that. So alcohol, I don't specifically remember. The smoking weed is more. That was about 11, 12, and it just became, like obviously influence of Western media now, and you can watch TV, and then people in the school started talking about it, and I remember the dumbest thing, that when I decided with one of my best buddies, his name was Gordon, that we're going to try weed, because back then in Germany, you could go into clubs, and the clubs had regulations that if you were under the age of 16, you had to basically leave your ID there, and you had to be out of there before 10 o'clock. And when you're under the age of 18, you had to be out of there before midnight and so on. So we could, at the age of 12, we could already go to like clubs, but it was more like the kiddie show or kiddie discotheque. But my buddy, we're meeting at his place, and he's all proud. He's like, okay, I scored this weed, and he's rolling with a those filters that are like active filter,
Oh
not
yeah.
not like filter tips that you'd roll in a doobie,
Yeah.
but the real cigarette
Oh,
filters.
I get what you're
So
saying.
so he rolls a doobie with that, right? And we're harping on that thing, and nothing comes on. It's completely filtered, and we think we're super stoned, but obviously we're not. So, and then yeah, it just became common in school, people having weed, and you there's a um, vending machine, and we pulled out cokes, and like empty them out, coke cans, and poke little holes in it and make little pipes
Oh
out of
yeah.
it and stuff like that. It's what we used to do in high school, junior high. And then the drugs, I remember specifically because I was 15, and there was a club in Friedrichshain, one of the districts I grew up in. It's called Ostgut, and I went to that club. It was a techno club because that was really really big in Berlin in the 90s. Like if anybody knows what the Love Parade is, or if not, look it up. What the Love Parade used to be and what the Berlin club culture used to be. That's where I grew up in. So at the age of 15 in that club, I was with my buddy Martin and his older brother. Um, he was a, let's say, famous local gangster. His gangster name was Bover. So he comes in the club with his other brother, and we're all proud as little kids, like, oh, he's Martin's brother Bover, and we know him. We're sitting with these guys, and and I remember that guy turning around to me and giving me an ecstasy pill and say, "Yeah, pop that, right?" And you want to be cool,
Yeah.
don't look like an idiot, right? Never done it in my life, but pretend it like I've done it for 100 times. So I pop an ecstasy pill and yeah, it was quite the exciting night. But I remember from then on, it was party every day, every night. Like, well, every day. We still went to school, but
Yeah.
usually on a Thursday afternoon, you would start, or Friday, you would skip school already. And if the teacher is lucky, you're back by Monday by noon, right?
Yeah.
So from then on, it was party.
Yeah. At any point, did you realize like you might have a problem, or it just was kind of the normal thing?
Um,
Or at what point did you realize, what, maybe this might be getting out of control?
I don't know that. I think until like I was married before, and when I met my first wife, like I had to leave Berlin because I had circumstances, and when I left Berlin to and went to a smaller town in Germany, I was 21, and I met my then wife, or my now ex-wife, and she wasn't into the drugs. And because I guess I was in love with her quite a bit, so I was able to really go around and pretend that I'm not an addict and stuff like that. And it went on for quite some time, to the point that even I would say from 2001 when I left Berlin until 2006, until I immigrated in Canada, I did drugs maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks, but I wasn't partying every weekend
Yeah.
anymore. It was more a thing like, you're in Switzerland on a tunnel project and there's concrete pour going on and somebody has speed, right? And
Yeah.
you're pouring 3,600 cubic meters for 72 hours, so you're pulling three shifts,
Yeah.
and yeah, half the job site stays alive is on speed and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Or then you go with the whole crew, the wife's in the lodging that was provided, and you go with the whole crew after work to go for a couple drinks down in the valley, right? And then there's people there that sell coke or stuff like that, right? So it was more like I was not with my now ex-wife partying the whole time, right? And when I came to Canada, started working here in construction as well, it became more that since we both didn't know anybody, the only people that I knew were the people that I met on the construction site, right?
Yeah.
So they became automatically our friends, and the drinking was normal for her too. So she came with me to parties, and it became like more or less an every weekend thing again, all of a sudden, right? Like I'd say by late 2006, I was back to like every weekend we're going to a party. She's drinking, and I'm doing other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think this whole time from the early 90s until I met my now wife, 2013. My first daughter, my daughter was born in 2015, and that's when my wife quit partying and drinking and all that stuff. And then I had to start sneaking around her too. And that's when I first started noticing that I had a problem. That it
Yeah.
wasn't because, due to the fact that with my first wife, it was so easy for me to sneak around and just do it once every month or so,
Socially or
you
so.
know.
Yeah.
So I thought I never had a problem and I could easily go back to that. But then all of a sudden I noticed with her it was with my now wife, it was different, that it was harder for me because at work I did it daily, and after work I did it daily, and that went to the point when our daughter was born. I I pretended to work long hours, or I was even sometimes I was even at work and purposely worked long hours just
Yeah.
to be able to do drugs and not be home, right? So at that point I started realizing I had a problem for sure.
Yeah. I totally get that too. Like you kind of cross this invisible line, or think you have like control, you don't really during it. You just don't really give it any awareness, right? That it
Well, it
just
was
kind of becomes normal.
Yeah, it was also so normal. Seemingly, when you're young, it seems so normal. Everybody is experiencing or experimenting around you, and everybody's partying. Like it's not like I grew up in a big city like Berlin, so I knew nothing else but partying. I can't think of anybody that I grew up with or hung out with that didn't at least drink on a regular basis. Like I'm
Yeah,
talking every single weekend, right? It
yeah,
was like everybody was partying every weekend, right?
yeah,
And until you realize that you are the one that doesn't just go on the weekends, that does it literally every day. Like it took me literally sitting in my garage, black ice, that shitty beer, that just high percentage alcohol.
yeah,
It took me a while to sit there and realize I'm drinking 24 cans of beer and doing all that other shit by myself. There's nobody there.
yeah,
Like I'm literally sitting in my garage, two kids sleeping upstairs, and well, no, there wasn't two. There was still only one at that time because I got clean before my second one was born. But yeah, kid upstairs, wife upstairs, and I'm sitting in my garage by myself, getting completely obliterated to the point that I have to crawl up the stairs.
yeah.
And that's when I really noticed I had a
Yeah, so,
problem.
something's not normal here,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, that awareness or that light bulb goes off. So, did you know anything about treatment, anything about recovery, anything about people living clean, or you
Um,
know,
I guess the most the most I knew about treatment was what you the odd time you see in a movie or in a TV show or so. Okay, AA. I didn't know there was an NA around
yeah,
until I actually actively looked for it, and I can't remember how that came about that I actually actively looked for a solution. I can't remember who got me to that point because I know my wife was gone, and that was almost 4 years ago, September 4 years ago, so 2018 in in I was probably in October. My wife left. She was pregnant with our second one. She took the kid with her, went to see her parents and asked them and said, you got to decide what you want, and then maybe I'll come back. And at that point, I knew I gotta change some. And then I I guess I just started looking. I just started looking for help. I just started going online, and I never really thought about any treatment or any of that stuff before then. It was late 2018 when I started actively looking for that.
yeah. I didn't go to treatment willingly. Like my story, like I got forced there. I was on WCB, and
Hmm.
I was supposed to go back to school and had no coping skills or
Yeah.
no life skills, and I couldn't even pick up the phone. Or so I ended up having to go to counseling, and then I went to treatment from there. But I was asking for like a co-ed treatment facility, and like had no intention on quitting. Didn't even think I had a problem. I thought I could just buy an 8 ball, split it into 4 bags, go to school, just use on the weekends. And
Yeah.
I learned a whole lot of shit when I went to rehab or went to treatment that
I
I didn't
guess
know.
if you say it like that from work, I knew because our company it's a large company that I work for, and they have the policy too that if you get caught with drugs, right, they can't lay you off because it's social circumstance, blah blah blah. They have to offer you treatment, right? So I knew a couple people that went into, I don't know if it was treatment or if it was counseling or whatever, but for me in my head it was always okay, you fucking poor bastard, you got caught, now you got to talk to a fucking psych guy or so, to a shrink. That's always what I thought
Yeah.
about that type of thing. So,
Obviously, you never talked to any of those guys after, eh?
well, the funny thing is, so like one of them I'm still talking to, right? Like one of my best friends, and he while we were both working, I was superintendent, he was one of the carpenters. Um, we never hung out. We all knew like we knew obviously on a job site who does it and who doesn't
Yeah.
do it and whatsoever. And I knew the last time he worked for me, um, he didn't get laid off. Like I laid him off 3, 4 times, and then the last time he disappeared from my job site, and it was a large job site, like I'm talking 250 people a day. So I myself had 30 guys. So until it actually clicked that hey, this guy's gone, it took like 3, 4 days until one of the foremen said, yeah, no, this guy's still not showing up, and we don't know where he is. And then it turned out that a year later, I met him in the rooms again. He was already a half a year ahead of me with his recovery. And then in the rooms, we became more or less best friends. And he works with that company again today. So,
Cool.
yeah, I still talk to those people that I
Yeah.
knew from back then. But
Cool. So, what was your first experience then with recovery? Like, did you do it through the 12 steps? Did you go to meetings, or how did you make that first step?
And so I remember coming from a large job site in the north side of Edmonton at night. My wife was gone, like I said, so I had nowhere to go. So I stopped by my one of my friends' places that I would always stop by just to use. And we were talking. It was a Thursday night, and we were talking. I was like, I gotta just gotta really stop. Like, you know how you sit with your friends and you know you have a problem. You're saying, okay, you know what? Now I'm gonna stop. But I was honest at that point. I told him about my wife being gone and everything. And then I started looking it up and said, you know what? I found this thing here. Let's go to an NA meeting, right? Let's in Sherwood Park. It's tomorrow night. Um, so he agreed to come with me. So we went. I think it was a Friday night in Sherwood Park to an NA meeting, and he was thrown up before. He had no intention of staying clean. Both of us were high as kites, and it was extremely disturbing for me that meeting. Like just going to that meeting was that I got up and or I sat in the back of the room, and then there was one guy. It was a big round table, and was one guy was saying he's celebrating 15 years clean, and something clicked there, and I was like, well, "There's something wrong with this." Like I expected to come to NA and get like a recipe how to do it, and how I can take it home, and then that's the way I do it, right? So this guy explains that he's 15 years clean. I'm like, well, this program can't work. If you're still here after 15 years, there's something wrong, you know. Like my expectation was I come here for a couple of days and then I'm
Yeah,
going home and I'm all cured. But obviously over time I learned that that is not the case. So yeah, my first experience was horrible. I just hated it. I just hated being in that room, and it took me probably five, six, seven meetings over 2 weeks. Meetings that I was obviously intoxicated at until it clicked, and it was that Wednesday meeting that I'm going to now, my home group, that I met that buddy that I was just talking about again, and at that point it clicked, and we had conversations. It was just before my wife came back, and we had a lot of conversations where I told him straight up, I'm like, listen, buddy, if I can't stay clean until my wife comes back, I'm going into treatment. I have to go in a facility, because we had talked, and since I met him on that Wednesday night again in a room, we talked literally like every day, and he told me that his story that he went in treatment. So I said, yeah, if I can't, if driving to work is still a trigger for me, then I'm gonna have to go in treatment, quit my job, and go in treatment. So it luckily never came to that. I stayed clean, and then at this point, it just clicked. Like he was a big part of my recovery.
yeah. Be an
And
example.
yeah,
So
exactly.
um, so what made you keep going back after that first meeting? You said you went about 7 times in about 2 weeks. What drove you to keep going back after that first one?
I guess the thing that I heard in the only thing I remember from that meeting in Sherwood Park was there was a guy saying, "Well, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is keep coming back." So then I figured, well, the second meeting I went back, and okay, it's a shitty fucking hour and a half where you're sitting in the corner high and fucking have to listen to these people. But if that's all I have to do, and at one point it's gonna work, so I kept coming back, and I guess thinking about it now, it was the will to
Yeah,
to turn my life around, right? It was also more or less the fear of losing my wife,
yeah.
right? So that's why I said I have to keep going. I have to try what I can.
What do you got to lose, right? you know,
Well, my
like
family, yeah,
yeah, like, but I mean, like, keep going. Like, yeah, there was nothing bad that was going to keep coming from it if you kept going, right?
yeah.
So, and obviously the people didn't scare you away either.
No, no, I mean, at the end, it was not scary to people. It was just, I just didn't associate with anybody, right? For the first couple of weeks, until I met Phil, or until I met that friend in a Wednesday meeting. I just couldn't. I just thought, oh, y'all fuck ups, y'all addicts, right? It just took me a while to realize that, hey, I'm actually one of you guys. I'm, even if I don't have the story that I lived under a bridge or anything like that,
Yeah.
I still have a story, and that somehow relates, right?
Mhm.
So
Well, that's a big thing too, is learning to identify and not compare, right? Is
yeah.
finding that similarities with the people, because I used out there with you, we're just sober fucking crazy people, I guess.
Yeah,
Or clean
exactly.
crazy people.
Yeah.
Um, what were some goals that you set that first year that you accomplished?
That first year, I guess the main goal was keeping clean and keeping my wife being. I think that one of the biggest things, and that was one of the biggest things for my wife too, is like honesty, like being honest to my wife. So that was That was one that I really had to focus on because I was just so programmed for my entire life that lying, lying wasn't even lying or stealing wasn't even anything bad for me. It was just a way of living, right? So I really had to reprogram myself on for honesty. So that was one big goal. And then at my in my last days of using, I was 265 pounds and not in shape whatsoever. So one big goal was to lose quite a bit of weight, which I did, over 50 pounds in the first year. So
Cool. Cool.
yeah.
Congrats. Any goals you're working on today or
Um I don't know. I In regards to recovery, I don't know if there's any. I mean, I'm working on self-improvement every single day, right? A little
yeah,
bit at a time. I think that the main goal I would say nowadays is being there for my kids, spending the most time I can with my family, seeing my kids grow up, and I guess mentally I'm focusing more on the longevity part of it. My dad didn't die when I was young, but he died way too young for his age. He died
sure.
at the age of 72 already in 2013. So it's always in the back of my head that, I my dad never got to meet my wife and my two kids, and I don't want to be that guy. Like I had my kids significantly younger than when my dad had my brother and I, but I still want to see my grandchildren.
Yeah.
So my focus nowadays, and apart from the not using drugs, obviously, is living a lifestyle as healthy as possible for just longevity aspect of it, right?
Yeah. And there's so many different components to that lifestyle too to
Oh
take
yeah.
care of, right? It's not just one,
And
you
there's
know.
so many different opinions about it too, and so many
That's
different
true.
things that you think you can or can't do, right? That it just start at the question what to eat, right? And you can open a can of worms, right?
Yeah.
Where people saying, "Oh, you eat meat, you're gonna die young," right? You got to limit your in order to do the real hardcore longevity thing, you got to limit your protein intake and all that stuff. And I don't know if I'm there yet. I'm still a meatitarian. I eat lots of meat and I eat lots of veggies too, but to to an extent, that life is still fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was listening to a podcast. I listened to him too, and the guy said, you're gonna see whatever you want to see, right?
Yeah.
And he Googled, is coffee bad for your eyes?
Hmm.
And sure enough, there was surveys that said coffee's bad for your eyes.
Yeah.
And then he Googled, is coffee good for your eyes? Sure enough, again, there's
Yeah.
tons of reports that says so. It all depends. Like we're programmed or we're fed this stuff of whatever we choose to see, and you know,
Exactly, our filter of where it only fits in our filter, right? When whatever we want to see, right? So,
yeah,
yes, exactly that point. Like animal protein might honestly be hundreds of millions of studies that it's bad for you. I'm the type of guy I just don't want to accept that, right? It's just too a steak is just way too good to accept that fact.
I'm with you on that
So,
one.
so
Kill the cows. No,
yeah.
I'm just um, what were some of your okay when you first got clean? You didn't go to treatment. You did it not on your own, but like you did it without. I don't even know how to put it. A jump start, I guess. What were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome?
Mm, one of the biggest challenges was realizing that I'm not as good at my job as I am, and that a lot more people than I thought knew that I was a fuck up or that I was an addict. Because like I was still a superintendent and I was still running a big job site, but apart from the people that worked under me, there was a lot of people that worked beside me and a lot of people that worked above me that just out of respect never spoke out, but they clearly all of a sudden knew what was going on, and they showed it because I was clean. All of a sudden, everybody seemed to be, or maybe I just heard it now because I had a clear mind. All of a sudden, it seemed like everybody spoke out about that, and it it was a challenge because I was always in my I'm quite full of myself, to be quite honest. I don't have to hide that. And it was hard for me to learn that I was actually not as God's gift to construction as I always thought I was, right?
Yeah,
So and the other thing that was hard for me was obviously staying clean because I worked myself into a lifestyle where my drug of choice, cocaine, I used that literally every day. Like I went to bed at one o'clock in the morning, making sure that I have enough left, or that I already had an appointment set with a dealer for because I have to open my job site at 6:30 in the morning. So either I know there's somebody still up in the morning that I can meet before I go to work, or I have enough left until lunchtime or so until I can go out and get some,
Yeah.
right? So I worked my entire work life into in or my drug habit into my work life. Like extremely. So it was hard for me in that regard because there was a lot of triggers and just it was late 2018 and in early 2019 I was pulled off this big job site because it was coming to an end and I was giving a portfolio of jobs where I had to start driving around from one job site to the next, to the next, to the next. And that was a big thing for me because driving my company vehicle was always like, well, I would go and get out. If I would sit in my truck, I would go and get something,
Yeah.
right? So driving around, having nobody could actually know if I'm from here to here in 15 minutes or if I would make a detour and stopped somewhere. So there was a lot of times when I thought like, man, now we have the ideal job portfolio to do even more, right?
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't. Again, my wife and my I think the way I was starting to think about drugs, that's what kept me clean. So
So this one, like going through that, do you believe you have to change your thinking first or change your behaviors to change your thinking?
that's a good question. I think a lot of it starts in your mind, but the problem is if you don't do like a lot of times you can, let's take jogging as a habit, right? You can think about it all you want, but you're not going to move because it's a really tough thing.
Hmm.
Especially picture it's fall, it's raining outside, it's 5 in the morning. By 5:30, you have to be back from your run. What convinces you to go out there? It's not the thought that convinces you; it's the action. So I find it easier to literally close your mind and actually put your shoes on, open a door, and be in the cold, and then it comes anyways. Well, I'm out here in the shits anyway, so I might as well run.
Yeah.
So I think the action is it's just like the chicken and the egg, but I think the action is more important
Yeah.
than the brain.
Bring the
You know,
body, the
it
mind will follow kind of
goes
thing.
goes goes back to the when you think about something really funny, when you crack a joke or so, I smile.
Yeah.
So the muscles in my face start making a smile. You can reverse it when you're really, really depressed or when you're not happy. You can just use those muscles and smile. And if you do that, you look like an idiot because you're not happy. But over time, your brain will actually do the same thing and start kicking out endorphins, and well, it will make you happier. It's a proven fact, right? So I think the action is worth more
Yeah.
than just the thoughts.
I'm with you on that one. Like, and I learned this early on is that, and this is just my belief is, yeah, change my behaviors to change my thinking. Like, I can't think my way into acting differently,
Yeah,
but I can act my way into thinking differently.
that's correct.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So, what do you do for fun and recovery these days?
For fun,
Yeah. Or,
time with my family. That's the most fun. And then I'm home improvement. I'm still a builder through and through, like doing stuff at home that improves either the life of my family or just like uh, just the last couple of weeks I cast my own blocks, like landscape blocks, and did a whole landscape
oh,
planter
cool.
and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't sound like fun, but we go on vacations, here and there. I'm just tomorrow. I'm leaving, going to Regina, and then meeting with my family at her mom's place in Oxbow. So there will be stuff we do on the farm. I when I hear the word fun, I mean fun is not fun. Always used to be going out partying and this and that, but that's obviously not fun anymore. Fun for me is family nowadays. Family
Yeah.
time is fun. That's
Creating memories with them
yeah,
and things like that.
exactly.
I totally get that. I try and yeah, I love little sayings and I love expressions and I live by all these one-liners. And one for me is, you know what, it's not to give my kids all the things I didn't have, but to teach them the things I didn't know.
Yeah,
And like I want
perfect.
to take them out and create memories with them, and just that's the stuff that they're gonna remember, like thinking back, or hopefully that's what I want them to remember.
Yeah, well, that's how a kid spells love, right? Time.
Yeah,
That's
good one,
yeah.
good one. Yeah, I'll ask this one. You have any little sayings, life mottos, quotes, things that kind of really resonate with you?
Uh, No, nothing specific. I guess I'm floating too much with a self in that self improvement game that I don't retain anything that I always live by because I'm constantly changing, I'm constantly improving, right? So I could probably recite 100 million smart people or podcasters that said smart things, but um start making your bed or God knows what stuff, but
Yeah,
it constantly changes. It's not one model that I live by. I just never stop learning, right?
yeah,
Like that's that's one thing that my dad got me and that my dad taught me as a teacher is like it doesn't matter when, just be always open, never stop learning, right? That's
yeah,
there is no I had a discussion today about truth actually with somebody and uh there is no real truth in life, right? As long as you're open to learn, because there is no ultimate truth, it's all just opinion, right? And
hmm,
everybody's has their right to their opinion. If you close your mind and you don't listen to other people's opinions anymore, you won't learn. So I guess that's my life motto: keep your mind open, you know.
yeah. Actually, that's my my life goal is to remain forever teachable.
Yeah,
You know, to always constantly have that open mind. Yeah, like you said, it's everything is just opinion. There
yeah,
is, you know, your truth and their truth, but like it's not my truth. Like, it's all opinion and it's
yeah.
perspective. Um, what's something? What are you most proud of today, like characteristic wise for yourself, or where have you noticed the most growth?
um Being a dad, like that's probably the biggest thing growing in the last 6 years, because I mean honestly, when your kid's born, you're born as a dad, right? And nobody nobody was ever prepared, or nobody ever knew how to be a dad before he actually was a dad. So that is the biggest learning thing in my last half decade, I guess. And that's what I'm the most proud of, that nowadays I can be a dad and I can be there for my kids, being not just physically there but being mentally there, being present and being actively present in their life, you know.
Yeah, that's
So being
awesome.
a role model, that's the greatest thing for me right now.
That's probably the best way to put it too, is being a role model,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. What are some fears you overcame since getting sober?
Some fears. Well, the biggest fear is fear of losing my family, I guess. I don't know. The fear of not being able to quit drugs. Which was only, like I said, it only came very recent before I quit. But I think the biggest fear was, I guess when I was an addict, which I realized after is like the biggest fear was being alone, right? Being social, like I was always more of a social addict than a drug addict, and I think that's what got me into drugs,
Hmm.
because I could not stand being alone. I still to date I do not fall asleep without voices in my, like without having earbuds in and listening to a podcast or something like that. I grew up in Berlin with the, like I had my balcony doors open and had the sounds from the street to fall asleep. I can still, silence disturbs me. Like I can't meditate, or I haven't tried. I'm not saying I can, I haven't actively tried meditating, but the fear of being alone is one that I just noticed in the last 5 days, that I'm not as fearful anymore of being alone. Like the last 5 days, although my family was away, it was quite enjoyable. I kept myself purposely busy, with like extremely busy, to the point that I wouldn't sit on the couch before 9 o'clock and then watch maybe one episode of Peaky Blinders or whatever shit, and then go to bed, because I know if I would have sat down at 6 o'clock, you know, then I would have probably started the thinking. So I I guess I overcame some of the fear of being alone. I still don't. I still hate. That's still probably my greatest fear: being alone and dying alone.
I just heard something the other day, and it said there was a survey done, and they had the option. So 30% of women and 60% of men, they had the option of either sitting alone for 15 minutes in silence or getting electrocuted. And like 60 or 100%, 60% of men rather got electrocuted, and
Yeah,
30% of women would rather get shocked than like have to
yeah,
sit there for 15 minutes doing absolutely nothing in silence, you know?
yeah. I guess that's a societal thing too nowadays. It it might not be the way, or it might not have anything to do with my upbringing. Saying like I grew up in a big city and left the window open when I'm sleeping. It's just my personality. I don't know. I'm sure that society nowadays contributes to it with all that
Oh,
social media, and our brains are in generally kept busier. So I understand when you, especially if you ask Generation Z people, they would rather get just zapped, quickly before they sit in silence. I guess if you do that study with the phone, like who would rather get zapped or their phone taken away for 15 minutes, it would probably be 90% that rather get zapped. So yeah, but in general, we're not meant to be alone,
Yeah,
right? Like when you look at history of mankind, is the people that were loners were the ones that wouldn't survive. We
yeah.
only survived, and I'm talking like in the time of foragers, we only survived in groups, right? When we were hunters gatherers, we would not survive if we were not in a group. That is essential. And if you look in even throughout animals nowadays, most animals live in herds, right?
Mhm.
So I think that social addiction is one that is intrinsic in all of us to a degree, right?
Yeah.
It just took me to the point where I had to be the center of so, and I had to have lots of people. Like I used to carry back in the days when cell phones were still bricks and you could save 50 numbers in your cell phone. I used to carry a black book with
Oh,
me
I used to
because,
have one too.
like, I would always have like 10 or 15 times as many people or acquaintances as I would be able to save numbers in my phone, right? And even it came like, and nowadays I only have a work phone. I don't have a personal phone anymore. I don't need it. But even when I still had a personal phone like 4 years ago, I had probably 1,500 numbers in
That's crazy.
there. That's just, and I was selling too, so I had lots of people sitting on at my place constantly, right? I would go to bed at 2 in the morning and my living room was full of it, like six,
Yeah.
7 people still partying, right? I needed that social addiction that got me into the drugs 20 or 25 years ago, and it got me, it kept me in the drugs, right?
Mhm.
So
That makes sense. I can relate with that one totally. Like I used to be center to, or you know what, I used to sell drugs just so that way people would have to accept me, or I'd have something what they want. It was an illusion to me, thinking I was more important than what I really was.
yeah,
Yeah. What do you help others in recovery, or how do you help other people in recovery?
I guess opening the meetings every Wednesday, right? That's I'm always open to listening to people, and if people reach out, I answer. Tried best. I still have a full-time job, but um I sponsored one person who overdosed a year into it, unfortunately. So I guess the biggest help in recovery, because I don't force people's opinion. So the biggest thing that I can do for people in recovery is open the rooms, right?
Yeah.
And it was hard in times of COVID, where at some points we were sitting with three guys downstairs, and it that's my service, right? That's what I give back,
Yeah.
opening the room no matter what.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've only personally ever done service on like a home group level, right?
Mm,
Opening, closing, keeping the door open, things like that. So
yeah.
haven't asked this one for a while. How do you deal with feelings?
How do I deal with feelings?
Yeah.
Uh, Open the door, kick them out, and keep going. No, I don't know. I That's a tough question for me, specifically for me. I don't know how to answer that. How do I deal with feelings? I guess I recognize my feelings, but I'm not a very lovey-dovey feely person. I'm sometimes, I mean, obviously I express my love to my children and um to my wife, but I'm I'm dealing with so many people on a day, like it's hard to piss me off, like personally.
Mhm.
Yes, something that you do or most of the times don't do as a subcontractor can piss me off, but I don't take that
Yeah.
personal, so it's not really a feeling that I gotta really evolve on or get into. I don't know. I'm not I'm not a very feely touchy guy. I
I'm similar. You know, I like we're part of the same fellowship, same group. You know, and I can tell by your sharing, like we're very similar in the sense that you're just kind of on this even playing field. You might blip up and down a little bit, but
yeah.
like all in all, like it's being able to separate that logic from emotion and think more logically.
I think specifically now that I'm sober since almost 4 years, it has become way more balanced when you talk about the balance of the feelings. I think in my active addiction, I was, especially towards the end, I was way more emotional, with hating myself and hating my life circumstances or hating not being able to get out of it. And when I was younger, I was way more angry. And that was, I don't know, that was just the way I was. I was angry at the world. I was really angry as a kid. I was a violent kid and I was angry. I had no reason to, like, not from my upbringing or anything. It was more my surroundings. I don't know. It was proving myself again, that social belonging. Like, I'd rather be feared by everybody than, than loved. So that's
Yeah,
the way I behaved as a kid too.
yeah. Kind of what's that expression? Respect is not respect is earned or scare. I can't remember something like either be feared or friggin'
Yeah.
respected. I don't even know. Um, what was I gonna ask you here? Ah, oh yeah, this is what it was. Sorry. Um, you mentioned 4 years here. How long did it take you before you were before you kind of felt like I'm gonna be okay? You know, everything's gonna be okay.
Um, I don't know. It's like in that, you mean in a sense of like staying clean?
And it's, yeah, our life in general too. You know what? Where maybe like the chaos has kind of subsided, and you're like everything's gonna be all right, or you know,
I guess it's when my family came back. Obviously, that was for me. Life's gonna be okay. That was, like I said, it was one of the only fears that I have. I always knew life was okay. Like in my active addiction, in my brain, life would have been okay if I would have died on the streets of an overdose. Right?
mhm,
Like I didn't have the fear that life wasn't okay. It was just not what I wanted. I was never emotionally at the point where I was like, "Oh, my life is complete shit." Or so I wanted something different. So in that sense, I guess it was always okay. But when you ask in recovery, it was when my family decided to come back. That was for me the point when I knew I can make it. If they're
yeah.
coming back, if they're willing to try as hard as I try to for our relationship's sake, then I can do it.
What was the time span on that one?
It was not long. It was from the time that they left until they came back, maybe 4 weeks.
Okay. This one I like to ask every guest: role models, mentors, and in what areas of your life?
Oh, my parents, definitely my parents. Um, I know that's cliche, but I don't care about cliche. It's just think about it this way. Like my parents taught me how to be self-sufficient, how to be on my own, how to take care of myself, and but my parents were always the only ones that I could go to when I failed at being self sufficient, right? I could also go to my parents and say, "Go fuck yourself, I can do it better than you," and move out. And they would sit there patiently and say, or wait until I come crawling back, and then they wouldn't be the ones harping on me to say, "I told you so,"
Mhm.
You're 16, moving out is not a good idea. So uh, I guess you learn a lot from the people that you live with and from your friends and all that stuff. But I think the basic and the foundation that you get, I got from my parents. I was lucky enough. I didn't grow up in a shitty family where I got beaten or anything like that, or my dad was an alcoholic, or so my role models are my parents. That's
Cool. That's good role models to have, you
yeah,
know, and ones that are like in your life that you can actually see firsthand
yeah.
and behind the scenes and everything. I'm gonna ask you a couple more here. What do I want to ask you? Um, living in the moment, the importance of it, or living just for today.
I think it's really important. It is it makes you so much happier. Like, I'm not saying neglecting the responsibilities that you have, that I'm just going selling everything and living on a boat for the rest of my life. I have responsibilities. My kids want to go to school, and or should go to school. But if I have to worry about my past or my future constantly, I'm just gonna miss the moment. So I think instinctively I live in the moment. I That's very, very important for me. I can't spend too much time in the past, and I can't predict the future, although I try to, like everybody does. But I always recognize that those are just hypothetical outcomes. So I don't get I don't get much fear or depression over, oh man, what if this goes wrong or that goes wrong. I just, okay, if I do that, that could happen, but so be it, right? It's not
Yeah,
like either I do it or I don't. I have to make the decision now. I
yeah,
can't I can't predict the future. So
yeah.
it's very important for me living in the moment.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then you get to experience it all, right? Like
Yeah.
you get to experience it for what it is.
Yep, exactly. You pay more attention to it, and you learn that even more with kids, right? Like the moment, if like one big thing for me is putting the phone away when my kids are around. I mean, I'm like any dad. I'm not super dad, or so I get annoyed too, and I tell my kids, "Hey, we made two of you, so you play with each other. So get the fuck out of here and play." But I'm trying actively, honestly, to spend as much time as I can with them, and not time on the phone. And when I spend time with them, to actually actively spend time with them, right? So,
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. What's on? You got anything? You got a bucket list or anything on your bucket list?
for the short term, I think it is definitely going to take my family to Europe before my mom passes. My mom is resilient; she will live for a while. I mean, my dad always said he's going to be 108 and 106, and then he died at 72. But no, regardless, when my youngest, he's 3 now. When he's 5, so in about 2 years, not next summer, maybe the following summer. Take the kids to Europe. Take the wife to Europe. She wants to see where I grew up, and there's lots to see. Um, that's one of the bigger things on the bucket list. And then anything else, like work wise, I guess, or career wise, it's not really that much on the bucket list. I have a very fulfilling job. I love what I do. I tried other things. I tried to go on a project management role. I don't like it. I like being on a job site and
Mhm.
solving problems day to day. I don't I don't want to be a financial manager or something like that. So I don't know. We'll see what the future brings. I don't have
Yeah,
any specific goals. Some that I have to. Obviously, raising the kids, raising to give kids to be good, raising kids to make their own mistakes, to learn from their own mistakes, and making them, giving them the opportunity to grow up to be the person that they want to be. And then, like I said, the longevity thing. Hopefully, when the time comes, because it could probably come sooner than later, that the kids don't want anything to do with you anymore. Saying that they go out and have their own life. I don't expect my kid to come on vacation with me at the age of 16. So
yeah,
if they want to travel, then they probably want to travel with their friends. So I'm hoping that at the time in 10 years that I'm fit and willing and wealthy enough that I can take a lot of time to travel with my wife. So I we didn't get the chance, both of us meeting each other as in more or less active addiction, to party life. We didn't get the chance to do much traveling because you know how
yeah,
this is. You have all the plans. Oh yeah, we're gonna go to Mexico next week, and then next week comes around, and you're still sitting in your basement drinking. So, but we definitely gonna do that when the kids don't want anything to do with us anymore.
that's awesome. Last question then. What's an unexpected gift or unexpected gifts that you've gotten since getting clean?
Unexpected gifts and getting clean. Well, one that I don't know about, but probably that I don't know yet, but probably already getting 10 years of my life back.
Mhm.
Like at the last days of my addiction, again, I was 265 pounds, and I was probably on my biological age at least 10 years closer to my to my final date.
Yeah,
So I that was probably not unexpected. I worked hard on that, but that was a gift that I got back in recovery. Um, I don't know. Nothing specific that I can think of. Any unexpected gifts? I mean, the kids. I obviously they were never like, oh, well, what? I have a kid, and they were not very unexpected. We expected them, so can't say like nothing unexpected I
yeah.
can think of. Right?
Funniest thing I ever heard called kids was sex trophies.
Yeah. I'll chew that if you consider it a trophy, right?
Yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny. Awesome. I think that's pretty much it for time for us. So,
Yep.
what's something you want to leave? I'll let you close up the show here with this. What's something you want to leave the listeners? Something maybe we haven't touched on. Something you want to share with them. Or
Um. Well, definitely, if you're listening to this and you're struggling with recovery, is um work hard. Don't ever think that it will get easy, but it will never be easy. Because if you think that it's easy, then it's probably too late and you're too far out already to relapsing. Um, if you're already far enough away from drug use, keep working hard. If the staying clean or the not using is not hard for you anymore, keep working on your self improvement and think of it as a way of making more and more and more steps away from relapsing, right? The better you become, the harder you have to fall before you even relapse, right? Like I did that for myself, that when with the working out daily and the dieting and all that stuff, is like I knew already when there was like 2 days or 3 days that I wouldn't go in the basement to work out, there's something wrong. I got to start on the improvement stuff again, you know? So I was so far away from the, oh, potentially picking up, just because there were so many barriers that I put in there, like a clean living, healthy eating, and all that stuff, right? So I recommend everybody doing that. Don't think that recovery is just not using drugs, because just not using drugs is very, very easy. You can lock yourself in a room, throw the key outside, and you're not using drugs because you can't get out. So it is fairly easy if you think about it that way. Not using drugs is the easy part. Recovering is actually having now the ability to improve your life and keep actively working on it.
Yeah.
That's what I would suggest everybody.
Yeah. You earn it, right? Like
Yep.
that's why I like to say you earn it, right? Like nothing's really for free. You put in the work, you reap the rewards. So,
Yep.
and we get this life worth living today.
Yeah. Keep in mind, nothing's for free in life. Like nothing.
Yep.
So,
Well, maybe my friendship. No, I'm just kidding.
well, see, I gotta do an hour and a half podcast, so you're my friend. So nothing is for free, you know.
Only took forever. Yeah. Only took forever to get you on here.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. I just want to say thank you. Thanks for sharing your time with us. Thank you for sharing your story, your truth. I really did appreciate the time that we got to share chatting here. And I'll leave you the same way I leave you guys every episode, and that's make lots of memories, take lots of pics, and show the world your smile. Cheers.
Thanks.